What's inside me? The alien girl was shocked by what she learned. While other young aliens of her village were content to study the natural patterns of the sky or harvest the crystalline plants for energy, Lyra spent her days wandering alone, searching for something no one else could name. It was during one of these walks that she noticed it, a faint glimmer beneath the surface of the sand. At first, she thought it was a piece of crystal, which were common on her planet. But as she knelt closer, brushing the sand away with her delicate fingers, she realized it was something entirely different. The object was small, smooth, and oval-shaped, made of a material she had never seen before. Its surface reflected the light in a strange way, almost as if it was alive. Lyra's heart raced with excitement. She had found many unusual stones in her life, but this one seemed different. It seemed to hum softly, a quiet vibration that she could feel through her fingertips. She carefully lifted the object from the sand, examining it under the bright light of her twin suns. Tiny markings covered its surface, intricate symbols that seemed to shift slightly as she moved. Lyra frowned, trying to decipher them, but they made no sense in the languages she had learned. They were too alien, too precise, too human, she would later think, though she did not yet know the word. Carrying the object back to her small laboratory, Lyra could hardly contain her excitement. Her laboratory was a modest space carved into the side of a pink rock hill, equipped with basic scanning devices, energy analyzers, and storage for samples. It was not a grand lab by the standards of her planet's cities, but it was perfect for a curious mind like hers. Once inside, she placed the object on a smooth metal table and activated her scanners. The humming grew louder, almost as if it were responding to her curiosity. Lyra's eyes widened as readings flashed across her monitor. The object contained a complex energy signature unlike anything she had ever encountered. It pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat. "What could you be?" Lyra whispered to herself. She had discovered strange things before, but nothing that seemed to live in its own way. She circled the table, her long fingers brushing against the symbols, tracing their lines. The markings seemed to shimmer in response, glowing softly under her touch. Lyra decided to activate the artifact. She had no idea what it would do, but the pull she felt was irresistible. Carefully, she connected it to her energy converter, which could supply a safe, small amount of power. As soon as the current flowed, the object lit up like a miniature sun. Holographic lights danced around the room, forming shapes and patterns that made her gasp. A voice spoke, soft and melodic, though not in any language she recognized. It was a recording, a memory of something long ago, carried within the object. Lyra watched in wonder as images appeared in the air. Tall beings with 2 arms and 2 legs, walking on a planet that was green and blue, not pink and red like her home. Their faces were expressive, their movements careful and precise. Lyra's antennae twitched with fascination. She had read about the idea of other life forms from the stars, but she had never seen proof. This artifact was alive with history, carrying information from a world far away, a world she had never imagined. She felt a strange connection to the images, as if the beings in the holograms were reaching out to her, sharing something important. Hours passed, though they felt like minutes. Lyra barely ate or drank as she watched the holograms, taking notes and scanning every detail. She learned that these beings built machines, cities, and tools unlike any her people had ever created. They worked together, solving problems with creativity and care. They laughed, played, and expressed emotions in ways that were strange but deeply familiar. Something inside her shifted. Lyra felt a warmth in her chest, a new kind of curiosity that was not just about discovery but about understanding. Who were these beings? How had they sent something across the stars to her? And why had it ended up buried here on a quiet, pink desert planet? She fell asleep that night beside the artifact, her mind buzzing with questions. In her dreams, she walked among the beings in the holograms. She felt their joy, their worry, their determination. She woke up with a start, realizing she had remembered details she could not have known, as if the artifact had whispered them to her in the night. Over the next few days, Lyra experimented cautiously. She discovered that the artifact could respond to her thoughts. When she concentrated on a question, the holograms shifted to provide an answer. She learned about their language, their tools, their ways of working together. Each discovery made her pulse with excitement. The more she learned, the more she wanted to understand. But then something unexpected happened. One morning, as she was scanning the artifact, she felt a strange tingle in her body. Her limbs seemed lighter, her senses sharper. The humming from the object grew louder, resonating deep inside her. Lyra's eyes widened in surprise. She had never felt energy from an object move into her before. The feeling was not frightening, but strange and wonderful. Colors seemed brighter, sounds clearer, and she could sense even tiny shifts in the air around her. Lyra realized that somehow, the artifact was connecting to her in a very personal way. It was as if it recognized her curiosity and rewarded it. She tried to measure it with her instruments, but nothing on her screens could explain it. It was as if the artifact carried not just information, but a piece of something living, something aware. Lyra's heart raced. Could it be consciousness? She had always believed that some objects could be intelligent, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. Lyra spent days observing herself, noting the changes. Her thoughts were clearer, her understanding deeper. She could solve puzzles faster, notice patterns in the holograms that she had missed before, and even predict what the next scene in the recordings would show. She felt smarter in a way that went beyond what she had ever experienced. Yet with this gift came questions. Why had the artifact chosen her? Why had it come to this remote planet? And most importantly, what would happen if she learned too much too quickly? She felt a thrill of excitement and a hint of fear, but her curiosity burned stronger than any caution. She had to know more. Lyra decided to share her discovery with no one. Her people were cautious and practical, and they might not understand. They valued safety over curiosity, control over wonder. But Lyra knew that to truly understand the artifact, she had to explore it alone. And so she continued her studies, day after day, slowly uncovering secrets the artifact had kept hidden for centuries. One evening, as she studied the glowing holograms, she noticed something extraordinary. One of the images in the projection seemed to mirror her movements. When she raised her hand, the figure in the hologram raised its hand. When she tilted her head, it tilted its head. Lyra's antennae quivered in surprise. The artifact was not just a recorder, it was communicating with her, learning from her, responding to her presence. For the first time, Lyra felt a true connection with another being, even if it was only through technology. She realized that knowledge could be a bridge across worlds, that curiosity could bring her closer to lives she had never imagined. Her heart swelled with wonder and she whispered softly, "I will understand you. I will know your story." As the twin suns set over the pink horizon, Lyra sat beside the artifact, bathed in its gentle light. She felt a mixture of excitement and anticipation. She did not yet know what secrets lay within her new companion, but she was ready to learn. Something had awakened inside her, curiosity, courage, and a connection to a story far bigger than her own. Lyra did not yet know that the artifact's gift would soon reveal truths not only about the beings it came from, but also about herself. She did not know that the journey she had begun would change her life forever. But she felt it, deep in her bones, the pull of the unknown, the thrill of discovery, and the promise of something extraordinary waiting just beyond the horizon. And so, with a heart full of wonder and eyes fixed on the glowing artifact, Lyra began her adventure. Lyra woke with a start, her heart racing. The glow of the artifact still bathed her small laboratory in soft light, but something felt different. The hum of energy that had always comforted her now pulsed in rhythm with her own heartbeat. She stretched and noticed a strange sensation in her limbs, a lightness she had never experienced before. It was subtle, almost like a breeze moving through her muscles, but it made her feel different. She shook her head, trying to dismiss the feeling as excitement. After all, discovering an artifact from a distant world was thrilling enough on its own. But as she moved closer to the table where the object rested, she realized the sensation was not fading. In fact, it seemed to grow stronger. Lyra placed her hand on the artifact, and for a moment, the symbols on its surface shimmered as if in recognition. Then, without warning, a new pattern of light appeared in the hologram. This one was not like the previous recordings. It was more abstract, moving and swirling in shapes that seemed almost alive. Lyra's antennae twitched with curiosity. She reached out to touch the light, and as she did, a warm sensation spread through her body. It was not pain nor fear, but something new. She could feel tiny currents of energy moving beneath her skin, threading through her cells like invisible rivers. Her chest pulsed in time with the artifact's hum, and her mind suddenly felt sharper, clearer. Images flashed in her mind, human faces, bright and expressive, hands building machines, communities working together in harmony. Lyra gasped. These were memories, but not hers. Her fingers shook slightly as she realized the truth. Somehow, the artifact had connected to her in a way that went far beyond information. It had shared the very essence of another species with her. Lyra's mind reeled as she tried to process the sensations. She could almost feel the thoughts of the humans, their curiosity, their creativity, their drive to understand the world around them. Over the next few hours, Lyra experimented cautiously. She placed sensors on her body to measure the energy flows, but none of her instruments could fully capture what was happening. Her cells seemed to respond to the artifact, absorbing the energy and adapting in ways she had never observed. Every movement felt sharper, every thought clearer. It was as if the knowledge contained within the artifact was teaching her, not through words but through living experience. At first, she felt overwhelmed. Her mind buzzed with information, too much to organize at once. But then she realized that the gift the artifact offered was not just knowledge, it was understanding. She could not only see what humans did, but also why they did it. Their actions, their inventions, their ways of solving problems, all made sense to her in a way that transcended explanation. Lyra spent days observing herself, noting every change. She could sense energy flows in ways she never could before, noticing subtle shifts in the air, the vibration of the ground, even the faint pulse of life in nearby plants. Her senses had sharpened, and with them, her curiosity grew stronger. She wanted to know more, to understand everything the artifact held inside. One afternoon, as she studied a holographic projection of humans building a complex machine, she noticed her hands moving in perfect imitation of the human's actions. It was as if her body remembered the motions instinctively. She marveled at the precision of her movements, realizing she could replicate intricate tasks with ease, tasks that would have taken months of practice before. Lyra's excitement was mixed with caution. She knew that such changes could be dangerous if not understood carefully. Her people valued safety and stability, and she did not want to risk harming herself. Yet the allure of learning, of connecting with a species so different yet so intelligent, was irresistible. She continued to explore, day by day, discovering that the artifact had not only shared knowledge but also a part of the human potential. As the days passed, Lyra began to notice something even stranger. She could sense emotions in the holograms as if they were her own. Joy, curiosity, determination, all these feelings coursed through her mind, sometimes overwhelming her. She laughed along with the humans in their memories, felt the tension of their challenges and the quiet satisfaction of their successes. It was a new kind of empathy, one that bridged the gap between species and worlds. Lyra realized she was no longer just an observer. She had become a participant in the humans' experiences. Their memories and energy flowed through her, shaping her thoughts, guiding her actions. She could anticipate solutions to problems, think creatively, and even imagine entirely new inventions inspired by what she had learned. The artifact had given her not just knowledge, but the ability to grow beyond her own limitations. But with this growth came questions. How much of her own identity remained? Was she becoming part human, or was this simply an extension of her own abilities? Lyra pondered these questions carefully, observing herself with the same curiosity she applied to her research. She concluded that the artifact was not changing who she was. It was helping her realize what she could become. She felt a surge of pride and hope, knowing that she could carry this knowledge forward not just for herself, but for her people. Lyra decided to test the limits of her new abilities. She built small devices using the techniques she had learned from the humans' memories, combining them with her own knowledge of energy flows and materials. Each creation was more complex than the last, and each worked perfectly. Her confidence grew, and she began to imagine the possibilities, what her people could achieve if they embraced such curiosity and collaboration. One evening, as she adjusted a delicate mechanism in a holographic projection, the artifact pulsed brightly. Lyra froze, sensing that something important was about to happen. The light spread through the room, and suddenly the hologram shifted. This time, instead of showing memories, it displayed a vision of herself, standing among humans on a distant planet, exploring, building, learning. Lyra's eyes widened. The artifact was showing her a future, not just a past. It was offering her a glimpse of what could be possible if she continued to embrace the connection it had given her. She felt a thrill of excitement and a hint of nervousness. The path ahead was unknown, but the possibilities were endless. She spent the next several days exploring this vision, experimenting with her new abilities and learning from the holographic humans. Each experience strengthened her understanding. Each memory expanded her skills. She began to see patterns in human behavior, strategies for problem-solving, and ways of thinking that were unlike anything her species had developed. It was a revelation, and she felt a deep sense of gratitude for the artifact that had shared this gift with her. Yet Lyra also understood the responsibility that came with such knowledge. She could not keep this gift to herself forever. Her people would need to understand, to learn, and to grow alongside her. She began to plan carefully, considering how to introduce these ideas without causing fear or confusion. She knew that curiosity, when guided wisely, could inspire greatness, and she was determined to be the bridge that connected her world to new possibilities. As another night fell on the pink sands of her planet, Lyra sat quietly beside the artifact, reflecting on everything she had learned. She felt a strange mix of emotions: wonder, excitement, responsibility, and hope. The artifact had opened a door to a world beyond her imagination, and she had stepped through. She knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, but it was a journey worth taking. For the first time in her life, Lyra understood that knowledge was not just power, it was connection. The humans, though distant and different, had shared a part of themselves with her, and she had absorbed it with gratitude and curiosity. She felt a new kind of purpose growing inside her, to explore, to learn, and to bring that understanding back to her people. As she drifted into sleep, the artifact hummed softly beside her, a gentle reminder of the extraordinary gift it had given. Lyra dreamed of distant worlds, of glowing cities and shining skies, of humans working together and sharing ideas. She felt a sense of belonging she had never known, a connection that transcended space, species, and time. And deep inside, she knew that this was only the beginning. The changes within her were still unfolding, still growing, and she felt the promise of something extraordinary waiting just beyond the horizon. Lyra's journey had begun in curiosity, but it would continue in discovery, understanding, and the boundless potential of what lay inside her. Both human and alien, united by the gift of knowledge, Lyra had changed. She could feel it in the way she moved, in the clarity of her thoughts, and in the subtle pulse of energy that seemed to flow through her very being. Every day, she returned to the artifact, eager to uncover more about the strange beings whose memories now danced in her mind. Each session revealed something new, a clever solution to a problem, a creative invention, or a simple act of kindness that carried more wisdom than she had ever seen in her own society. One morning, Lyra awoke with a sense of determination she had never felt before. She decided to test what she had learned in practical ways. She wanted to see if the human methods of thinking, problem-solving, and collaboration could actually work in her own world. Carefully, she set up a small experiment in her laboratory, creating a series of mechanical puzzles that required careful planning, logic, and teamwork to solve. At first, Lyra worked alone, following the patterns she had seen in the holograms. She marveled at how the humans approached problems, not by force, but by observation, experimentation, and cooperation. Each step they took was measured, thoughtful, and precise. Lyra replicated their strategies, and to her delight, she solved the puzzles faster and more efficiently than she had thought possible. It was as if their methods had become a part of her own thinking, but the artifact had more in store. As she continued to study, she began to experience not just knowledge but intuition. She could anticipate solutions before the humans in the memories even reached them. Her mind worked in a new way, connecting ideas and patterns that had previously seemed unrelated. Lyra realized that this was the true gift of the artifact. It was not simply teaching her facts or skills, it was expanding her capacity to understand, to imagine, and to create. Lyra's experiments grew bolder. She began designing small devices that combined human ingenuity with the technology of her own planet. One of her first creations was a simple energy collector that mimicked a human invention she had observed. Using it, she was able to gather solar energy more efficiently than traditional methods. The success filled her with joy and pride. She felt the thrill of innovation, of discovering solutions that had never existed before, and she realized that humans had taught her something far more important than the specific techniques. They had taught her how to think. Yet Lyra did not stop there. She also explored the human capacity for empathy and collaboration. She remembered the holograms where humans worked together, helping each other through challenges, sharing knowledge, and celebrating successes. She realized that these qualities were as valuable as intelligence or skill. Lyra began to practice them herself, offering help to neighbors, collaborating with friends on small projects, and sharing her discoveries in ways that encouraged others to learn and grow. The results were remarkable. Even small acts of cooperation sparked creativity in her community. Others began to notice Lyra's new methods and the changes in her approach to problems. Slowly, curiosity spread. Young learners asked questions differently, explored ideas more freely, and began experimenting with solutions instead of relying solely on tradition. Lyra felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The humans' lessons were not just knowledge, they were a way of inspiring potential in others. One evening, while studying a holographic scene of humans constructing a complex machine, Lyra noticed something extraordinary. The humans were faced with a challenge that seemed impossible. A critical component had failed, threatening to collapse the entire structure. Yet instead of giving up, they worked together, analyzing the problem, suggesting solutions, and encouraging one another. Step by step, they found a creative answer, turning a potential disaster into a triumph. Lyra's antennae twitched with excitement. She realized that this was the true essence of human potential, the ability to face challenges with patience, creativity, and cooperation. It was not just intelligence, it was resilience, adaptability, and the belief that obstacles could be overcome. Inspired, she began to practice this herself, taking on tasks she had once avoided, experimenting with bold ideas, and embracing challenges that had seemed insurmountable. As the days passed, Lyra discovered that the more she immersed herself in the humans' memories and methods, the more her own abilities expanded. She could analyze complex systems, predict outcomes, and even improvise new solutions on the spot. Her mind felt alive with possibility. She began to dream of a world where her people could harness these qualities, combining their own knowledge with the lessons she had learned from the humans. Lyra's excitement, however, was tempered by caution. She knew that not everyone would understand her discoveries. Many in her society were cautious by nature, valuing stability over curiosity. They might see her new methods as strange or risky, but she also knew that progress required courage. She could not allow fear to prevent her from sharing what she had learned, even if it meant facing skepticism or doubt. To prepare, Lyra began to document everything carefully. She recorded the techniques, principles, and patterns she had observed in the humans, translating them into a form her people could understand. She included step-by-step instructions for problem-solving, illustrations of collaborative techniques, and explanations of how creativity and empathy could enhance intelligence. Her goal was clear: to create a guide that could inspire growth, learning, and innovation in her society. One day, as Lyra tested a new energy device she had built using human-inspired methods, a neighbor entered her laboratory. Curious, he watched as she adjusted delicate components with precision, using techniques no one else on their planet had attempted. Lyra explained the process carefully, demonstrating how observation, experimentation, and cooperation had led her to this design. The neighbor's eyes widened in surprise. "I have never seen anyone do it this way," he said. "It seems clever, different, but it works." Lyra smiled. This was the first sign that her ideas could resonate with others. If even one person could see the value in the human's methods, perhaps her society could embrace the lessons she had learned. She felt a renewed sense of purpose. The artifact had given her knowledge, but now it was up to her to share it wisely. Over the next weeks, Lyra expanded her experiments, combining human techniques with her own species' strengths. She organized small collaborative projects where friends and neighbors could explore ideas together, share insights, and build solutions. The results were remarkable. Challenges that had once seemed impossible were now approached with creativity and teamwork. The community began to thrive in ways Lyra had only dreamed of. Yet despite her successes, Lyra remained humble. She knew that the artifact had provided the spark, but the growth and understanding came from within. She spent quiet moments reflecting on the humans' resilience, their curiosity, and their willingness to help one another. She realized that these qualities were universal, transcending species and worlds. They were the true essence of potential, and they could inspire greatness anywhere. One evening, as Lyra studied a particularly complex holographic projection, she noticed something that made her pause. The humans in the memory faced a moral decision: to act in self-interest or to cooperate for the greater good. They chose cooperation, even when it was difficult, and the result was a success that benefited everyone. Lyra felt a thrill of admiration. This was not just intelligence or skill, it was wisdom, a recognition that true progress required caring for others and working together. She understood then that this was the lesson she must carry forward. Knowledge alone was not enough. It had to be combined with empathy, collaboration, and courage. If her society could embrace these principles, they could achieve remarkable things. She felt a sense of excitement and responsibility, knowing that she had the opportunity to guide her people toward a brighter future. As night fell over the pink sands of her planet, Lyra sat beside the glowing artifact, reflecting on the day's discoveries. She felt a deep sense of connection, not just to the humans whose memories she had absorbed, but to the potential within herself and her community. She realized that the artifact had given her more than knowledge. It had given her vision, inspiration, and the tools to help others grow. Lyra smiled, her heart full of hope. She knew that the journey ahead would not be easy and that challenges would arise. But she also knew that with curiosity, creativity, empathy, and collaboration, there was no obstacle she could not face. The human's lessons had shown her a new way of thinking, a new way of being, and a new way to inspire those around her. And deep within, she felt the promise of even greater discoveries waiting just beyond the horizon. The artifact had opened the door to a world of knowledge, and Lyra was ready to walk through it, guiding her people toward a future filled with possibility, hope, and the boundless potential of the mind. The journey of learning, growth, and understanding had only just begun. Lyra had spent weeks exploring the humans' memories, learning their methods of problem-solving, cooperation, and creativity. She had grown in ways she never imagined, and her experiments had begun to show promising results. Small devices worked more efficiently, energy was collected faster, and even her neighbors had started adopting her methods in their daily tasks. But Lyra knew that real change required more than just a few curious individuals. She had to share her discoveries with her society at large. And for the first time, she felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her. Her people were cautious by nature, valuing safety and tradition above experimentation. They respected knowledge, but they often feared the unknown. Introducing a radically different way of thinking could spark doubt, suspicion, or even resistance. Lyra decided to begin carefully. She invited a small group of friends and neighbors to her laboratory, showing them the devices she had built using human-inspired techniques. She explained, step by step, how observation, experimentation, and collaboration had allowed her to solve problems more efficiently. She demonstrated a simple energy collector, which gathered solar energy far faster than traditional methods. The group watched in silence, their antennae twitching in curiosity and uncertainty. Lyra could feel their skepticism. "How do we know this is safe?" one neighbor asked. "What if it doesn't work the same way outside your lab?" Lyra smiled gently. She had anticipated these questions. "We will test it carefully," she said, "step by step, and we will work together, observing every detail and learning from each attempt. That is what the humans taught me. They face challenges with patience and collaboration. We can too." Slowly, she guided the group through the process. They built a small prototype together, following her instructions and incorporating their own ideas. At first, mistakes were made. Wires connected incorrectly, sensors misaligned, but Lyra encouraged them to try again. She reminded them that failure was not something to fear, but a way to learn. By the end of the day, the energy collector worked perfectly. The group gasped in amazement. Lyra felt a warm sense of satisfaction. Not only had they built something that functioned better than any previous model, but they had done it together, learning and growing as a team. Word of Lyra's success spread quickly. Some of her neighbors were curious and eager to learn, while others remained wary. A few leaders in the village called for a meeting, questioning whether these human-inspired methods were safe or appropriate. Lyra knew this was the true test. She would need to show that her discoveries could benefit the entire society without causing harm. At the meeting, Lyra stood before the elders, her antennae held high, and explained her findings. She demonstrated the devices, showed the results of her experiments, and shared examples from the human memories she had studied. She emphasized the values she had learned from the humans: cooperation, creativity, patience, and empathy. Some elders nodded thoughtfully, seeing the potential for progress, but others frowned, concerned about the risks. "We have always done things this way," one elder said. "Why change now? What if this path brings trouble?" Lyra took a deep breath. She understood their fear. Change could be frightening, especially when it challenged long-held traditions, but she also knew that progress required courage. "I understand your concerns," she said calmly, "but we have a choice. We can continue as we always have, or we can explore new ways of thinking. The humans I have studied face challenges far greater than ours. They succeeded not because they avoided risk, but because they worked together, learned from failure, and trusted one another. We can do the same." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment the room was silent. Then, one by one, the elders began to nod. They saw the potential, the careful planning, and the success of her experiments. Lyra felt a surge of hope. She knew that trust was fragile, but she also knew that action could build it. Over the next weeks, Lyra organized collaborative workshops, inviting small groups to learn from her experiments. They built devices, solved problems, and practiced cooperation. Each success strengthened their confidence, and slowly, curiosity began to spread. People who had once been skeptical started asking questions, offering ideas, and experimenting on their own. Lyra observed with pride as her society began to change. The lessons from the humans, problem-solving, creativity, empathy, and collaboration, were taking root. People were not just copying her methods, they were adapting them, combining them with their own knowledge and traditions. New solutions emerged, faster and more efficient than anything they had achieved before. One day, a challenge arose that tested their newfound skills. A sudden energy shortage threatened the village, and traditional methods of collection were insufficient. Panic spread among some of the residents, but Lyra remained calm. She called a meeting, bringing together a group of learners from her workshops. "We have faced challenges before," she said, "and we can face this one. Let's work together, observing carefully, experimenting, and sharing ideas. Remember what the humans taught me. Solutions are found through cooperation and creativity." The group quickly got to work, combining human-inspired techniques with their own knowledge. They built energy collectors in new configurations, tested them systematically, and shared observations. Each attempt brought them closer to success. The process was careful, thoughtful, and collaborative. By the end of the day, the energy shortage was resolved. The village had more energy than before, thanks to the combined efforts of the community. People celebrated not just the result, but the way they had achieved it. Lyra watched with pride, knowing that this success was more than just a technical achievement. It was proof of the power of collaboration, trust, and shared learning. Lyra also noticed a change within herself. The artifact had given her knowledge and intuition, but now she realized that the true gift was seeing others grow. She had become not just a learner, but a teacher, a guide, and a source of inspiration. Her heart swelled with hope as she imagined the future possibilities for her society. Even the most skeptical elders began to acknowledge the value of her work. They saw that curiosity, when guided wisely, could lead to growth, innovation, and resilience. Slowly, they began to encourage younger learners to explore, experiment, and share ideas. Lyra felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The humans' lessons were not only shaping her, but also transforming her community. But Lyra knew that the journey was far from over. Change always brought challenges, and there would be those who resisted, misunderstood, or feared the new ways. She would need patience, perseverance, and wisdom to continue guiding her society. Yet she felt ready. The trust she had earned, the curiosity she had nurtured, and the collaborative spirit she had inspired were strong foundations for the future. One evening, as she sat beside the glowing artifact, Lyra reflected on the lessons she had learned. Humans had taught her more than problem-solving and invention. They had shown her the value of empathy, patience, and trust. She realized that knowledge alone was not enough. It had to be shared, nurtured, and applied with care. Lyra smiled, knowing that the changes she had sparked were only the beginning. Her society was learning to embrace curiosity, creativity, and cooperation. They were discovering the power of working together, and she felt certain that the future held even greater possibilities. As the twin suns set over the pink sands of her planet, Lyra gazed at the horizon, filled with hope and determination. The artifact hummed softly beside her, a gentle reminder of the extraordinary gift it had given. She knew that her journey and the journey of her people was just beginning. The test of trust had succeeded, but new challenges awaited. Lyra felt ready to face them, guided by the lessons of the humans, the wisdom of her society, and the boundless potential within herself. She understood that progress required courage, collaboration, and the willingness to embrace the unknown. And she was ready. Lyra stood at the edge of her village, watching the pink sands stretch toward the horizon. The twin suns were sinking, painting the sky with shades of gold and violet. It had been months since the first spark of curiosity had led her to the artifact, and even longer since she had begun sharing what she had learned with her people. The village had changed in small but remarkable ways. Children and adults alike were experimenting, building, and learning from one another. Cooperation and creativity had become part of everyday life. The artifact hummed softly beside her, as if acknowledging her growth. Lyra had learned much from it, but she also knew that the most important lessons had come from within herself: patience, empathy, and courage. These were the tools that had allowed her to guide her society toward progress. And now, she felt that she had reached a new stage. It was time to take the next step, not just to experiment, but to inspire a larger transformation. Lyra returned to the village hall, where a group of elders and learners had gathered. They were eager to see what she had discovered next. She had spent weeks preparing, combining the lessons of the humans with the strengths of her people. She had designed devices, tools, and methods that could make life easier, safer, and more efficient. But more than that, she had developed a system for teaching and learning that encouraged curiosity, problem-solving, and collaboration in everyone. "I have something to share with you all," Lyra began, her voice steady and calm. "These are not just machines or tools. They are ways of thinking, ways of working together, and ways of understanding the world. Humans, a species from a distant planet, taught me that intelligence alone is not enough. We must combine knowledge with empathy, cooperation, and creativity. And if we do, we can achieve remarkable things." She demonstrated the first device, an energy collector that absorbed sunlight far more efficiently than traditional models. Then she showed a simple water filtration system that could purify water faster and more effectively. But the most important demonstration was not the devices themselves, it was the process. Lyra guided her people step by step, showing them how to observe, experiment, and learn from each attempt. At first, some villagers were hesitant. Change was never easy, and the new methods challenged long-held traditions. But as they participated in the experiments, something remarkable happened. They began to think differently. They noticed patterns, suggested improvements, and collaborated to find better solutions. Mistakes were no longer seen as failure, they were opportunities to learn. Lyra watched with pride as her people's confidence grew. She saw children teaching adults, friends solving problems together, and neighbors sharing ideas openly. The energy in the village had shifted. Curiosity and creativity were no longer limited to a few individuals. They were spreading, becoming part of the culture itself. One day, a neighboring village requested Lyra's help. They had faced a problem with energy collection that had left them struggling during the heat of the day. Lyra agreed to assist, bringing a team of learners from her village. Together, they analyzed the situation, applied the methods she had taught, and designed a solution that combined both human-inspired techniques and the strengths of their own technology. The solution worked perfectly, and the neighboring village was amazed. They had expected a simple fix, but what Lyra offered was something far more powerful, a way of thinking that allowed them to solve problems creatively and collaboratively. Word spread quickly, and soon other villages began to request guidance. Lyra realized that her society was on the verge of a cultural transformation, but Lyra also understood that transformation required care. Knowledge alone was not enough. People needed to feel safe, supported, and encouraged. She established learning circles where small groups could work together, share ideas, and support one another. She emphasized patience, empathy, and respect, ensuring that the new methods were adopted thoughtfully and with understanding. As weeks turned into months, Lyra observed something extraordinary. Villagers who had once been cautious and hesitant now approached problems with curiosity and confidence. They built new devices, improved existing tools, and even developed entirely new methods for harvesting energy, purifying water, and cultivating plants. The creativity and innovation that Lyra had once only seen in the humans' memories were now flourishing in her own society. Lyra felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The artifact had given her knowledge and intuition, but the real gift was watching her people grow, learn, and embrace the potential within themselves. She had become a bridge, not just between species, but between possibility and reality, curiosity and action. One evening, as she reflected on the progress, she felt the familiar pulse of the artifact beside her. It had guided her, taught her, and inspired her, but now its role was changing. Lyra understood that she no longer needed it to learn. She had absorbed its lessons, integrated them into her mind, and used them to inspire others. The artifact had completed its work. Lyra's thoughts turned to the future. She envisioned a society where curiosity was celebrated, where cooperation was valued, and where creativity and empathy guided every decision. She imagined her people exploring new technologies, solving complex challenges, and building a world that combined the best of their own knowledge with the lessons she had learned from the humans. But Lyra also knew that the journey of growth never truly ends. Challenges would continue to arise, new problems would emerge, and there would always be opportunities to learn. She felt ready to face whatever came next, confident that her society could adapt, grow, and thrive. The humans' lessons had shown her that potential was not fixed. It could expand, evolve, and inspire greatness. As the twin suns rose over the pink sands, Lyra walked through her village, observing the changes she had helped create. Children were exploring, experimenting, and learning from one another. Adults were collaborating, sharing ideas, and applying creative solutions to everyday problems. The energy in the village was alive with curiosity, possibility, and hope. Lyra paused at the edge of a small hill, gazing at the horizon. The artifact hummed softly beside her, a gentle reminder of the journey that had begun months ago. She felt a sense of gratitude for the knowledge it had shared, but she also knew that the real transformation had come from within herself and her people. Together, they had embraced the lessons, applied them, and grown beyond what anyone could have imagined. She smiled, her heart full of hope. The journey had started with curiosity, grown through discovery, and blossomed into understanding, cooperation, and inspiration. Lyra had learned that potential is not limited by species, distance, or circumstance. It is awakened by curiosity, nurtured by empathy, and realized through collaboration. In the days that followed, Lyra continued to guide her society, introducing new ideas, encouraging experimentation, and fostering a culture of curiosity and cooperation. The lessons of the humans were no longer distant memories. They were living principles, integrated into the daily lives of her people. And in every corner of her village, Lyra saw evidence of the transformation. Small devices hummed with energy, water flowed clean and clear, and new methods of cultivation and energy collection were being developed every day. But more importantly, she saw the spark of curiosity and creativity in the eyes of her people, a spark that could never be extinguished. Lyra knew that the journey was ongoing, that there would always be new challenges and new opportunities to learn. But she also knew that her society was ready. They had embraced curiosity, creativity, empathy, and cooperation, and they were capable of achieving remarkable things. As she looked out over the pink sands, Lyra felt a deep sense of peace. The artifact had shown her the potential of humanity, but it was her people who had realized it. She had become a guide, a teacher, and an inspiration, and in doing so, she had discovered the true power of knowledge shared with care and purpose. Lyra whispered softly, "The journey continues, and together we will reach new heights." The twin suns set once more, casting golden light over the village. Lyra stood with confidence and hope, knowing that curiosity, cooperation, and creativity would continue to guide her people toward a future filled with discovery, growth, and endless potential. And somewhere deep within her, she felt the human's lesson still pulsing softly, a reminder that the potential to learn, grow, and inspire knows no bounds, not across species, worlds, or time. Lyra had discovered what it meant to truly embrace possibility. And with that understanding, she and her people were ready to shape a future brighter than they had ever imagined.